Explosions have reportedly hit a Russian airbase far from the Ukrainian border, damaging two long-range bombers. Unverified video of the blasts have been posted on a variety of Telegram channels. The blasts early on Monday struck the airbase near the city of Engels, more than 600 kilometers inside of Russian territory. The bombers damaged are said to be of the same type used to carry out airstrikes on Ukraine's infrastructure. Another explosion hit a military base near the Russian city of Ryazan. At least 3 people were reportedly killed after a fuel tank exploded. So far, there has been no claim of responsibility for either of these blasts. So let's get more on this. We are joined by our correspondent, Nick Connolly, who is standing by for us. Nick, tell us a little bit more about what we know about the explosions.
Yep, so far the kind of evidence we have to go on is pretty thin. We've seen images on social media of basically from kind of closed-circuit TV cameras from houses near that base. You just kind of hear a big bang. In some of the other footage you see a kind of explosion of kind of flash of light on the kind of night sky. But we have heard in the case of Engels from the regional governor telling civilians not to panic, saying pointedly that civilian infrastructure hadn't been affected and wasn't going to be affected, so implying that definitely there had been some kind of attack on the military base there, which is basically one of the biggest strategic air bases in Russia. It's where some of the bombers that in the threat, if nuclear war became a real possibility, they would be launched from there, from planes from that base. And we've seen that base being used to then fly missiles that are aiming at Ukraine to the Caspian Sea and launch them from there. So this is a real kind of direct cause and effect, if indeed this is Ukraine, going after the kind of very same planes that have been wreaking such havoc on Ukraine. As for Ryazan, the other base there, where we have that Russian official line that this was an explosion of a petrol tanker. But not many people here believe that. They say that this is basically just a kind of fig leaf, an attempt to kind of explain away another Ukrainian attack. Whether these were missiles or drones, we don't know yet. Here in Ukraine, everyone is kind of convinced that these were kamikaze drones.
Tell us a little bit more about the response of the Ukrainian and the Russian authorities.
Well, so far, the Ukrainian kind of government sources are keeping quiet. Some of the kind of military bloggers and social media accounts associated with Ukraine's military have been reporting on this with lots of different kind of smileys and kind of ironic texts accompanying these images. I think it's unlikely that Ukraine would ever kind of directly own up to this. As for the Russian side, well, we've seen time and time again when things go badly for the Russian army on the battlefield, they try to basically keep quiet for as long as possible until they basically make up some kind of face-saving explanation. The same was the case when Ukraine sunk Russia's most important battleship in the Black Sea back in the summer. It took days for them to really kind of work out what their line would be. So I think there's little kind of expectation that we're going to hear something soon. But this is really big news. This is the first time that Ukraine, if it is indeed Ukraine, has attempted these kind of things that deep in Russian territory, that far away from the front lines. And it shows that Russia's air defences just aren't up to the task, and that Ukraine is now able to make Russia feel as vulnerable as Ukraine itself has been feeling vulnerable in recent weeks and months. And I think psychologically, I think it's difficult to overestimate the effect of this for ordinary Russians to see that Ukraine is not just the place where war happens, but that Ukraine is also potentially able to bring war to Russian cities.
Let's talk a little bit more about the vulnerability on the Ukrainian side, because it's been experiencing severe energy shortage because of the Russian airstrikes. How is the situation where you are now?
So we are now quite some time from the last kind of major attack, these mass missile attacks that we've been seeing time and time again in recent months, and things are slowly getting back to normal. It's not perfect, and in Kiev you still have kind of emergency blackouts when the system is overloaded, but broadly things are getting better. It is taking longer each time for Ukraine to recover because just basically the spare parts are running out and the foreign help isn't getting here fast enough. But there is a sense here in Ukraine that there is also just little point in rebuilding every time the Russians decide to destroy this infrastructure, that actually it is now more worthwhile going after these targets in Russia to prevent Russia launching these kind of attacks, because there just aren't enough transformers, enough equipment on the world markets to keep on rebuilding every week. And we've still got 4 or 5 months of winter to go, so definitely a kind of change in mood here.
Nick Connolly in the Ukrainian capital, Kyiv. Thank you so much.